So today I am talking on inspiration itself. The idea being that I'm going to tell you what inspires me, not that you should be inspired by what inspires me, but I wanted to have you think about what inspires you, because it's inspiration itself. It's inspiration that helps us stay inspired. And the more we can stay inspired, the better chance that we'll then inspire others. And so being inspired is a good thing. We have enough people who are uninspired in this world, right? What we want is to light them up, light up ourselves. You know, it's my go-to. If I'm in the dumps or whatever, I go to what inspires me. And so I want to support you in doing the same. So let me walk through some of the things that inspire me. Gandhi inspires me, particularly two stories. The first has to do with him marching to the sea to make salt. It was about a 250-kilometer hike, which is a little longer than I'd usually take. About 12 kilometers was my last one. And the idea being that he was going to make a handful of salt. And the British government at the time was like, so what? He's going to make a handful of salt. Now, the British government made a lot of money off selling salt and made it illegal for the Indians of India to make their own. But him making a handful of salt, what was the big deal? And so what inspires me about this is how small gestures can have big impact. There was this thing I saw on the internet. It said, I'm only one person. What can I do? Said 1 billion people. And so we tend to think that there's not all these other people out there who might jump on board of our tiny gesture. And I forget that sometimes. And it's good to have that reminder that small gestures can actually have big results. Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And so there's this thing about small gestures and how large the impact can be that inspires me. So he goes down, does this whole walk and gets to the ocean and actually makes the salt, and everybody goes, rah, rah, and the British government's going, so what? And then what nobody except Gandhi seemed to realize in terms of that simple gesture was that then other people started making salt. Until all of a sudden, there was about 100 different people making salt. And out of those 100 different people making salt, thousands started showing up to buy it. And all of a sudden, the British government was like, whoa, wait a minute. This wasn't the small thing we thought it was. And then the bigger thing that occurred out of that was, well, if we can do this, what else could we do? And one thing after another led to finally the British leaving and giving India its independence. Starting with a small gesture, making a hand of salt. And that's very inspiring to me when I look at what's possible from small gestures. So when you're looking at, what can I do? Think of those 1 billion people who are saying the exact same thing, maybe at the exact same time, and what a small gesture can change. The other story about Gandhi that inspires me has to do with after India had achieved its independence, the Hindus and the Muslims went to war with each other. And one day, a Hindu man comes to Gandhi and with incredible guilt, saying, I killed a Muslim. I busted his head wide open. I don't know how to be with this. And Gandhi said to him, adopt a Muslim boy and raise him as Muslim. And why that inspires me is it reminds me that I make mistakes and need to make amends. And sometimes those amends take effort, strength, and maybe are a lot larger than the mistake I made. And I shouldn't just I don't go back and sit on the mistake and go, well, I don't need to do that. I can let this one go. And it really helps me stay in integrity with myself so that I don't let go of those things that I might let slide because they're too hard. It reminds me and inspires me that sometimes what I need to do to make amends may seem too hard and is definitely still worth it to keep my integrity. We all make mistakes. We all do things that we may look at and go, I wish I hadn't done that. The thing is, what do we do next? Do we sit with our guilt, or do we allow ourselves to rise? I'm inspired by that. Another thing that inspires me is Mother Teresa. My favorite Mother Teresa story is one I've told you before, but I'm going to repeat now for this talk, is when she had 50 orphans and wanted them to be adopted. And so gathered all the people, all the adults in the city, as many that would show up, and said to all this crowd of adults, please adopt these 50 kids. And nobody budged. And so she grabbed one and held up one and said, okay, who'll adopt this one? And they all laughed because it was lighthearted. And somebody stepped forward and said, okay, I'll take this one. And then she held up the next one. And then she held up the next one. And in this way, all 50 were adopted. And why that inspires me is it reminds me that sometimes I look at goals and dreams that feel overwhelming, and what I need to do is cut them down to smaller slices. That if I feel overwhelmed by my dream or by what's in front of me to do, it's because I'm looking at it in too large a pie. That the inspired piece of this is that I can cut it down and make it so that I can take my next step. It doesn't matter what it is. We can make it so we can take our next step. That to me is inspiring. So while I'm going through this and you're listening, I want you to be thinking about who inspires me and why. The why is really important. Looking at what about that inspires you? What's the quality there? And I'll be talking even more about that later on in my talk, but I want to get you going in terms of thinking that way now. Jesus inspires me. Not the mythic Jesus. When I get inspired by Jesus, it's because I like to think of him as a regular guy, like myself, just a regular guy, just doing regular guy things. I mean, there was a reason he turned, water into wine. He liked to party. I like this guy. He liked to laugh. He liked to have fun. And he told stories. And I love to tell stories. I'm very inspired how he turned his stories into these incredible teachings, right? And I'm inspired by that because I like to do that too. So I think of him as this regular guy who came up with these great stories. One being the prodigal son. I have been called that on occasion by different folks in my life. The story being about a son who leaves home, makes a mess of his life, so comes back home. There's another son who stayed home the whole time, diligently working and putting, and doing everything his father said. And the prodigal son comes home and he's accepted arms out by his family. And the other son is like, how come? I mean, I'm the one who stayed here and did all the work. How come you're being so nice to my brother who just made a mess of things? And the dad says, this is what unconditional love is all about. This is true love. You don't turn away for people. And that was his point. It wasn't just about family. It was about how we're all one family. And how when we turn people away and we judge them, we are not living up to that spiritual greatness that is within each of us. And so I wonder I think about it for myself. Who have I judged and pushed away in my life and not held in unconditional love? That's inspiring to me. The other story I love is the Good Samaritan. This is my favorite of his. The idea that there was this group called the Samaritans, which the Jews thought were like, the untouchables. They were people who got married outside the faith, and so were, disenfranchised. And Jesus was like, well, there was this guy. He was jumped by thieves, beat up and robbed and thrown into a ditch. And the Jewish priests just passed him by. The Jewish ministers and people of commerce just passed him by. But it was the Samaritan who stopped and picked him up and took him home and healed them. Because if we're going to judge somebody, let's judge them by their hearts, not by not obeying laws that man made anyway. And I love that. I love the idea that it doesn't matter the color of somebody's skin. It doesn't matter what their sexual preference is. It doesn't matter, what job they've decided is theirs to do in life. What matters is how are they good people? Or do they have an open heart? That's what I love about this community. It would have been way easier for me to find a community in the United States, but the one that I fell in love with is here in Canada, and so because of how open-hearted you all are, right? And so I'm very inspired by that idea that what we're doing here is creating a community of open-hearted people. That's what we're doing, of people who are open to all, non-judgmental. That's very inspiring to me. And because he's a regular guy, I imagine that after he lost his temper and got pissed off at the gates of the temple and kicked over the money changers' tables and all that stuff, as they were nailing him to the cross, he might have thought to himself, maybe I took that one a little too far. Certainly that's what I would be thinking at that point. And so that's what inspires me about Jesus, is that when I think of him that way, right? Then there's sunsets, sunrises, the colors, man. I love the colors. They blow my mind, the beauty and the majesty and magnificence. I'm so inspired by that. To see those colors, to see that brilliance, and to think, wow, I can see that in a flower in my backyard. It reminds me, it inspires me to look for beauty, to remember how beauty is so uplifting, and that we're surrounded by it all the time. I love that. The stars in the sky. You can't see much of it in Edmonton, but you get it. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have gotten outside of Edmonton at some point and had the opportunity to look up at a star-filled sky. And I think to myself, the abundance of it. The abundance of it. And I think about how in our universe, There are as many galaxies as there may be people walking on the planet. Galaxies, and in each galaxy are all those stars. And around all those stars are all those planets. And some of them have people walking around on them that may be just like us, or maybe a little different, maybe look a little different or whatever. But life forms, the abundance of it. And I love to lie there and look up at the stars and say to myself, I am that. I am that. The abundance isn't just something out there. Like we talk about God. God's not something out there. God's in here. I am that. God, that is so inspiring and scary, right? Because if I am that, that means there's no limit. And every time I limit myself, it's because I'm scared. So it reminds me that if I'm having fear, it's because I've limited and forgotten that I am that. All of that in its brilliance. So I took this workshop. One of the exercises in the workshop was to write down all this kind of stuff, what inspired me, and then to look at the qualities of that. And what the workshop leader said, which was so startling to me that I have been taking in since then, is all those qualities you just circled are in you. That you must have what inspires you, or you could not see it. You can only see in the world what you have in yourself. The bigger you see for yourself, the more you can see in the world. And so we ran through an exercise where we took it in. We took in that idea that all those things that inspired us, for me, all the qualities I spoke about Gandhi, the qualities I spoke about Jesus, Mother Teresa, all those ideas, were small gestures, that my small gestures can have a large impact. That means I have that ability. I have that in me. Because as we grow our own inspiration in ourselves, then we become what's called inspired people. And isn't that what we need more on this planet? Inspired people. Like I said earlier, we got enough uninspired people. So this is our chance to become that which the world actually needs more of. Inspired people. And one of the best ways to do that is to remember that I am that. I am that which inspires me. So what I want you to do now, because I like to do things that, involve you doing stuff, is as you've been sitting there thinking for yourself, who inspires you? Take a moment now to actually look inside and notice their qualities. What are the qualities of those folks that inspire you? Take a moment. Take more than a moment. Really allow it to notice. Think of 1, 2, or 3 different people or situations that inspire you. And then take the time to think of why. Why is that inspiring to me? Now what I want you to do is close your eyes, take a deep breath, and relax. And as I've done with you many times, see yourself on a path. It is the perfect path. It is your path. And it leads to your sanctuary, your perfect sanctuary. And in that sanctuary, there is a chair that is so perfect for you that when you sit in it, you feel the And what I want you to do from that place is think of those qualities one at a time. Take one quality, just one, of the qualities that you've been thinking about that inspire you. And feel it enter your heart. That quality, embodying it. It enters your heart, goes out through your bloodstream into every cell of your body. That quality that you are inspired by is you in every cell of your body. Now take a second quality, the second one you've thought of, and feel that quality enter your heart, going out through your bloodstream, entering every cell of your body. You are that. And say that to yourself. I am that. I am this. This quality is me. Let that in. One more. Take one more quality. Feel it sink into your heart. Feel it go out your bloodstream into every cell of your body. I am this. I am this. You are the inspiration you've been waiting for. You are the inspired person going out into the world, inspiring others. It may be small gestures. It may be large ones. It may be small pieces of your big dreams. But you are an inspired person living an inspired life. Know that for yourself. And when you're ready, come back into the room. This is the possibility. This is what we all have within us. All we got to do is let it shine. I stand here for each and every one of your inspirations. I stand here for each and every one of you as an inspired life. I love you. Thank you.